back into it. All right, we're back. I don't know why we got kicked off. Sorry, we were rolling along. I even have comments in here. Regardless, I asked Jason basically about the financial situation with Bob and Ben. Does he have money to spend? Does he not have money to spend? I'm a little confused. Some of the quotes recently have made me feel extra confused.
Yeah, I'll pick up where I left off. I mean, that quote about Martin Perez confused me as well, where he basically said it fit within the portfolio of what we were trying to do. And I don't even know the name of the guy that they traded for. Like, he's an 18-year-old kid in Dominican, whatever. It's fine. But, I mean, you know, you didn't trade Martin Perez because you really wanted this guy. You traded Martin Perez so you could bring in salary. That's essentially what he said. Nothing that I've heard around the Pirates indicates to me that Ben's hands were tied behind his back with money. I mean, not, you know, let me say it that way. I don't think he can
to a degree.
To a degree, yes. I know. As soon as I said that, Jim, I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah. We'll hear about that afterwards, Jason.
I know, right? But yeah, that's why I stopped. So anybody who's clipping that, don't clip that part of it. You know, I think Ben has enough to put together a winning team. I mean, Ben didn't go into this thing thinking he was going to spend exorbitantly on Major League payroll. You know, I've heard other things about Ben wanting to spend in other areas, not necessarily Major League payroll. And I understand, you know, more like processes and whatever and stuff behind the scenes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But to me, you also have to spend on Major League payroll. That doesn't mean you do like that in lieu of it. I get the deal. Like, in you know, meaning like the Perez deal and what they did at the deadline, like that kind of does make sense to me, I guess. Like, it's not really worth paying Perez what you were going to pay him. And if you don't have any extra money, which it seemed like Ben admitted, then okay, you did something and it's still kind of the same financial level. So I don't know.
I thought the deal itself was actually smart to do, right? You're trying to, like, I don't have any qualms with doing that. I think they should probably do that in this offseason, is trim as much fat as you can to try to free up as any type of funds that you have to do so. So I don't have an issue with it. They actually did it. It's just been this odd, did he have to or did he not? And like you said, the portfolio thing is really curious, because why not just say, avoid that terminology. So that was strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different way to phrase that. Maybe that's a little bit crude. Maybe it's insulting to Martin Perez if you just come out there and say, look, he wasn't pitching very well for us. We had other guys we wanted to give opportunities to, and we didn't really think we had that much of a use for him, but we didn't want to pay $8 million for a bullpen piece. That's not a good allocation of funds. I don't have any problem with that.
I, again, had no problem with the move either. I didn't like hearing that he felt like it needed to happen in order to enable really the paltry amount of things they actually did. And I'll be real honest, I liked him better than Jalen Beeks. I don't feel like, I mean, and they traded a pitcher that I personally really coveted from the minors for him, you know, and then look what he did in Colorado.
Yeah, but you don't like Jalen Beeks because Jalen Beeks didn't pitch terribly well. Like, if Jalen Beeks would have come in here and did what he did with Colorado and previously, you probably would have been more in the camp of Jalen Beeks. And so you're using information after the deal to inform.
Sure.
You didn't have that at the time of the deal.
I am a fan, but yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you want to evaluate the process, that's fine. But, like, you can't use the intel gained afterward to look at the process.
I think, like, if I lined them up before the trade, though, if you asked me if I wanted Martin Perez in my bullpen or Jalen Beeks, I think I probably would have gone with Martin Perez, if only because he was familiar with us. He had been here. He knew the catching, you know, he knew the system. This is what he's doing here.
Yeah. You know what I didn't like, guys, is sending out so many starting pitchers. To me, it's like either or. I wish they would have had a little bit more depth, preserve a little bit more depth, in meaning like Priester or Perez. You know, maybe hold on to Quinn and make him a piggyback guy. Make him a bulk guy, something like that. Get a little more creative with his usage. He was generally good one time through the order. It's the second time through the order that got him. Or keep Perez and maybe use him as a swing guy. I just, trading both of them, I do think they left themselves a little thin.
I mean, I felt like another question that a lot of us had was, you said you wanted to be like the Arizona Diamondbacks, but the Arizona Diamondbacks kind of just got hot at the end of the season. Their team came together lucky. Rookies performed, pitchers took off out of nowhere, trades really worked out. Some of their signings, strategic and low-end signings, really took off. The Pirates didn't really make that kind of effort, did they? I mean, can you argue that Rowdy Tellez and Yasmani Grandal, and do you think the group they brought in was in the spirit of trying to match what Arizona did, or do you think they thought they were closer?
Yeah, you have a point, but I don't know if that's what I don't know if they said they wanted to be like the Diamondbacks in terms of the ads. I think the Diamondbacks comp was more the style of play. Like, they're not going to put a bunch of balls over the fence. They're going to have to run, be athletic, use their speed. And I agree with all that. Put the ball in play. Don't strike out. No, they didn't do a good enough job of that. I'm not saying that's what they turned into, but I'm saying what they thought they could do is a little bit more like the Diamondbacks. I mean, if you look at the I don't know their strikeout numbers off the top of my head, but I don't think they're terribly high.
No.
They can certainly run. They can defend. And I think that's the model of baseball the Pirates went after. They just didn't do it. So I don't know. I mean, if Rowdy Tellez was better, that could have made a lot of sense. It just didn't work out. Like, I liked the process of the platoon with him and Connor Joe. I felt like you were taking advantage of things that guys did well, but you just didn't perform very well here. Neither did Joe.
Right.
I think too, like, Gary, do we need to take a break, or did that whole
we
thing?
Got a couple minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I think this conversation even leads into a little bit of like more about the trade deadline and what they did. And maybe Jason, do you feel that like these were moves they really felt were going to really up their chances, or was this we're going to make moves because it seems necessary that we have to, and these are the guys that we could bring in to do that, not to placate, but to show we're trying, but only maybe to an extent.
I mean,
how do you view all that?
I mean, I think they tried. I think they made moves that they thought would help the team and were trying. I mean, sit here and say they were the wrong ones, certainly. I'm not defending them. But, yeah, I don't think they made the moves just like, we got to kick the can or make it look like we care or something like that. No, I mean, if you're Ben, if you're Derek Shelton, if you're the coaching staff, if you're, even people informing Ben of decisions, like, there are jobs on the line. They don't know in that moment that they're definitely coming back. They want things to work out. They need to win games. Like, they're aware this is year 5 of a rebuild, and they need to, or year 5 of a regime change. I'll use language to match what they think in this instance, but it's been a while. They know they need to win. I don't think they have any interest in, just doing something for the sake of doing it. Can that urgency be a little bit higher now? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've written and others have written critically of them because their actions this offseason don't really speak to a group that, sees that 76 wins at this point is unacceptable. But at the deadline, I don't really have a huge problem with what they did, guys. I don't. I mean, De La Cruz didn't work out. Beeks didn't work out. I'm okay with Kiner Falefa. He was okay. But, I mean, you didn't give up a ton to get those guys. You preserved your top prospects, which I do think is important. I wouldn't have traded Bubba Chandler probably for anything, at least reasonable deal-wise. Yeah. And they're still set up for next year. I just don't understand why, they think it's magically going to change after back-to-back 76-win seasons.
On that note, let's take a break and let's come back and let's talk about why they stopped where they stopped on the change train.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Sorry about the stutter start too. I'm not sure what happened, but it seems to be fixed now. So hopefully it's cool and you jumped right in and you're happy. And
we'll play through it.
I'll reiterate all the awesome things that we said about Jason and all of his work. I'll have to write glowingly about it now, and then he can post it on the Post Gazette where it'll actually get seen.
It's all good.
But we saw a regime change late in 2019 when they finally decided to do so. And I don't know. You can argue it came partially from public pressure. You can argue it came after Bob's self-evaluation that he claims to go through. Do you feel like this coaching staff and the GM are in a place where they're moving forward, head down, looking towards 2025 now? Do you think we're through that? Or do you think we're potentially still in consideration mode? I know a lot of people have taken it as this is it. It's all they're doing is changing the hitting coach and the strength trainer and the bullpen coach. Is that maybe not it, or do you think it will be?
How do I say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm saying a nothing burger? I think that's possible. I do. I don't think we are I don't look at the Cherington comments on himself and Derek Shelton as gospel that they're coming back. Okay. Everything I know about what Bob wanted to do, you pointed it out in 19, how Bob operated then was to, step back and learn and understand what is going on with this organization. And does he really need to make a change? That was my understanding. It was going to take weeks to do that. Bob wasn't feeling a rush. And this was the evening of Andy Haynes being fired when Andrew Destin broke that. That was, I spent that whole night on the phone with people. And so, and then the next day I asked Ben about his own, what he's been told by Bob and Travis and what they've been told about Derek Shelton, et cetera. And that's when he said that they've been told, or he's recommended that they return and supported, blah, blah, blah. I thought more about that. And what is Bob going to say in that instance? Is he going to tell Ben? I don't know. We'll see. Hang on a couple weeks. No, he's probably going to just support it. These are our guys until they're not. And what is Ben going to say in that setting? Is he going to come before the media in all of the city and say, "Oh, I don't know. Bob said he's not sure. Bob told me to wait a couple weeks." That just doesn't jive.
Jim, do you put any importance on the fact that we haven't publicly heard from Bob, really?
Well, no, because Bob seems to certainly pick and choose his spots very carefully in that regard. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I do feel like everyone has just assumed it was Andy Haynes, couple other things, and that's all been settled. I guess my concern would be is such a crucial offseason for them. Whatever decision you want to make, I would go ahead and get on it one way or the other, because what is it? 5 days after the World Series end, free agents can sign. You would like to think that things would be cleared up and, one way or the other. So if Ben Cherington is interested in keeping his job beyond this next season, and Derek Shelton, that you would want to have a clear direction and as much time as possible to go in that to go in the direction you need to go. So
yes, and I somewhat agree with you, Jim, but I also think that the Pirates being what they are, they're not a destination place right now. The 5 days after the World Series, I really don't think they're going to be active in free agency at that point.
It's not going to be, the top guys are not going to be the ones they're going after.
But I also agree with you in the sense that you've got a plan for next year. You've got to know who your manager, your general manager, all those people are. And at least based on what we've been told publicly, that's Derek Shelton and Ben Cherington. Right. So, that's not nothing, right? That's why I was at the beginning of this answer, trying to balance what I think with also, the second part where Ben Cherington did say on the record that he brought this to Bob and Bob supported it. So like, yes, that's also just real. There's a chance Bob just,
I'm sure it is. I'm sure he's,
Bob believes it for whatever
public.
reason. He thinks that they're on a good path. I would disagree, obviously, but he might believe it.
So media markets, this is a baseball question, just in general. Media markets 1, 2, and 22 are repping the game of baseball in the Final Four. The actual baseball's been incredible. I have no complaints at all. The games have been awesome. The series have been fun. I've really enjoyed them. But how healthy is the game right now, Jason? I mean, it really feels like there's some small market owners that are trying to get ready to bug out here before the CBA breakdown in 2027 that we know is coming. There's TV war all over the place. Nobody knows what's going on. It's unsettled. In fact, we should consider ourselves lucky we have a pretty dedicated channel established. We know it's coming back next year. What's going on in the game? How do you feel about it?
And do you sense anything, out there, any doom and gloom, or is it just business as usual because no one really knows?
Well, I think it's a bit of a dichotomy, honestly, guys. I think the on-field product has maybe never been better, or it's in a really good place. Like, I think the baseball you're seeing is good. Like, you're seeing different ways of winning. You're seeing on-field talent that is easy to digest. It's fun to watch. Like, whether we're talking about starting pitching or Shohei Ohtani or the Mets getting hot or what the Guardians have been able to do in their bullpen, like whatever. All of the playoff teams, I think, have offered pretty entertaining stuff. I like the changes that Rob Manfred has made. Pitch clock, speeding up the game in general, accentuating speed, kind of taking baseball out of the 3 true outcome, although I still think there are too many 3 true outcomes. But like, I understand what you're talking about in the economic side of it. And the TV stuff is not great, but they're over $10 billion as an industry. They're attracting a bunch of eyeballs. I think they're gaining more international eyeballs, exposure, whatever. The World Baseball Classic was a very big thing. I think there's momentum for that to continue. I think there are established stars from a bunch of different countries. So you're touching all kinds of different markets. Do I think it's a great financial situation? No. I hate the economics of baseball. I wish it was, more like the NHL model, more like the NFL model. Baseball's in this weird sort of Netherland, right? Where, it's not a national media TV situation, but the money from TV is so unfair that you can sit here and call the Pirates cheap, but you know what? The deck is stacked against them.
It feels an awful lot like the NHL circa like 1994-ish, 95-ish, it really feels
the NHL felt though that they had to do something though, or their game was their game was in trouble, right? In the sense of they had to get some, what do you want to call it, reform in and whatever. I don't think baseball feels that way. It's just becoming that fight over the pie, right? And is that going to be something that enough owners are worried about when this new CBA comes up and how that's distributed? And so, to me, it's more like the game. Jason, I totally agree with you. I think the game on the field and the stars of the game, it's hard to beat some of that right now.
Yeah. They're doing incredible things that have never been seen.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul Skeens has never been seen before. Things that Bobby Witt Jr. is doing right now, insane. Shohei Ohtani, unbelievable. Aaron Judge. I mean, there's wonderful, wonderful stars and stories all over the game. I love it.
But right now, the RSN model that has propped up baseball is crumbling. So, that's bad. That's bad for everybody.
For a lot of teams too, right? It's not.
Yeah, unless you own your own network, I suppose, which basically susses out the rich from the poor.
Yeah, I mean, I worry about it because I feel like no matter what the Pirates do here, Jason, I feel like they're on a trajectory to kind of be in the heart of being really good right when baseball potentially goes into another one of these lockout/shutdown moments. And that's why I'm paying such close attention to it, because you're talking like year 3-4 Paul Skeens being threatened, things like that they
Do you think
can't
a lockout's
afford.
coming though?
I feel like it's a 3-sided war right now. I feel like you have the big market teams and the small market teams.
Yeah.
Small market teams are, and we defined this last week, but small market is just how you spend. I don't really care about your media market. If you spend like that, like the White Sox in the number 3 media market in the world, fine, you're a small market team. I don't care. So I say the small spenders and the big spenders are kind of getting tired of giving the small spenders money and then having them continue to cry poor with their hands out and not spending. So I think there is a little bit of a groundswell for a floor. And that a floor can't come without something else, which is tighter restrictions on that top end, right? And somebody is going to have to say something about, you can't do what you did with Shohei Ohtani's contract because there's only one team in the whole country that can do that.
Yeah.
Only one.
I know. You're exactly right.
That's not fair, and somebody's going to say it.
I know.
Yeah, I think that thing pissed off even
Steinbrenner.
Just not even small teams. It pissed off pretty much everybody that wasn't the Dodgers.
Right. But I feel like that's a different conversation, though. Like you're talking about poor teams being upset, rich teams spending, or vice versa, and then the rich teams not wanting to give money to the poor teams. Well, I think the rich teams, when it comes down to it, would rather give money to the poor teams than have their spending changed or limited in any way. Like if you're the Dodgers, wouldn't you rather give money to the poor teams versus you can only spend so much when that's your greatest asset? Like if I'm the Dodgers, I'm holding that position. Okay, take my revenue sharing money, whatever. I still have greater financial muscles that I can flex than all of you. Even if you take my money, I don't care.
It's the thing that you keep over all else. You will have to pry that from their cold dead hands type.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's more of them than there are the poor guys. So like we can have a lockout, but I don't know what it's going to change.
I don't think either side's ever successful. So like they both threaten it every time.
Here's what I do think is interesting, guys, is last year's free agency was weird, right? Like the way that teams were spending or not spending and how that was being done. And Gary, we talked about this a lot. That I could not believe we weren't starting to hear from the players and the players' agents that there was some sort of collusion going on about how teams were spending. I think if you get into another offseason and you see the repeat of that, then that's when things will start getting a little bit more testy between the sides, right? Because as Jason said, the revenues are there, but are the teams going to spend? Are guys still going to have to settle for these 1-year opt-out type deals? Or is it going to return to what it was before then, which was, hey, free agency, the first couple weeks, that was exciting. Like not for Pirate fans, but it was for baseball. And it was weird last year. So are we going to see a repeat of that? And what are the ripple effects from that if it happens? Because I think it might.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing this is a bigger conversation, but let's go with it. I think it's entertaining. How does baseball see itself? And I don't think baseball realizes how out of place it is when compared to the NBA or the NHL. I think football is kind of its own animal because you have the draft and the immediacy and, free agency. It's certainly a thing in football, but it's not like the first day of free agency in the NBA. It's not like the first day of free agency in the NHL. Like those are captivating times for fans of basketball and hockey. And, you have all this stuff going up in the air. So-and-so signed with this team. So-and-so signed with this team. It becomes a gigantic story. And you know what? Frankly, it's kind of nice. Then they go away. Then everybody goes away. Like you have a summer. Baseball, it's just this slow trickle. It's not entertaining. It's a nuisance. I feel bad for players have to stay on this. If they don't have a team, teams have to stay on it. If they don't have a player they need, it never really goes away and it's never really interesting. I don't understand why Major League Baseball doesn't look at this and be like, man, maybe we're doing something wrong. We're not
doing kind of a dedeline on it.
Just compress
it. Make it
compress it.
January 15th.
Great.
You have to have everybody sign.
Great.
I mean, it you're right. I mean, like, I'm a fake beat writer. I'm just doing like blogging. So
Me too.
but coming up with stories like in the off season when nothing's happening it's not possible. Like you can only so many times conjecture about like who's going to sign where, and like it gets difficult. And I do wish they would compress it. That's a great point. So let's kind of slant this conversation a little bit. The extra wild card. We've had a couple years to look at it now, right? And I do think it's given some teams an opportunity that maybe wouldn't have. Detroit certainly wouldn't have, and the Royals as well. They were very, very low end entrance into the playoffs, right? They had a great time. It was a wonderful atmosphere and everything. I'm sure at Pirates Fest we'll hear them pointed to as examples of what can be done. But do the big spenders ever maybe kind of get tired of spending so much for the same result? If you can get away with 90,000 or 90 million and get in the bottom rung and then take it all the way, why wouldn't you do that over spending 350 million? I mean,
and
I
are too
wonder if
many
there's some teams that will
willing
start
go
to kind
that
of just trickle the other direction a little bit. That's all.
Well, I mean, I've made this argument, and you get accused of like defending the Pirates, or if you say something like this, you're shilling for the Pirates. But you're not wrong, Gary. You're not wrong. Like, I'm not advocating having a bare bones payroll, but do you need to spend $300 million? Of course you don't.
Right.
I mean, look at the Guardians, man. Look at what a lot of small market teams do. I mean, I would love to see the Pirates. If you could tell me they're going to do something internationally, they're going to draft well, they're going to develop guys, and the payroll is going to be around 100 million, but never too much past that, at least for now. Like, we're going to get to about 100 million, but like, they're really going to be good at that other stuff. I'd sign up for that. I really would. I think that is
essentially the Brewers.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, the Pirates aren't going to out payroll anybody, and I don't really care. But I wish they would out draft people. I wish they would out trade people. I wish they would out develop people. So yeah, like what you're saying basically is like, do these teams that spend a lot ever think like, man, maybe there's a cheaper way to do this? I mean,
here's the kicker though.
Maybe they do.
You've got to have one team actually win it all, so you have more than the 2015 Royals to point to.
Yeah,
because as good as the Rays have been and as envious as they are, I mean, they're not in a great position this offseason. I don't know where they're even going to play next year. But they've never won the whole thing. Like, that's always going to be the Achilles heel.
Yeah.
It's always going to look like that's what's preventing you from getting just that extra step. It may just be dumb luck. But until it happens a couple times, I don't think my fantasy is ever going to come true. So
what is that? Seeing like the Mets spend $80 million and small ball their way to a World Series?
No, I think what I just want to see is maybe I think the Padres are an interesting case. And for instance, their owner, he spent some of his own money. I have mad respect for him.
Yeah.
I love what he did there. I love his reason for doing it. He's just wanted to win. I wanted them to win this year posthumously for him. And he was a brilliant businessman. He built up parking all around his building. He brought in revenue streams that our owner has never even attempted to take advantage of around his ballpark. So not that I've seen. You may have something to tell me, and I would love it.
I mean,
nothing that I've seen anyway. They don't own parking.
No, they don't.
And I just think
I don't know if that's for. I don't think it's available for them to own. Like where is Bob going to park cars in the sky? Like I mean, I guess he could buy garages from Alco, but I mean they own stuff around PNC Park. I think the idea is that it's not lumped money back into the ball club and it's not on the scale of Wrigleyville, right?
True. But I do love anyways what the Padres have done. No, but we're going to see them back off now because their new owner, he's already said, that it's not sustainable. They want to get back down under the salary cap tax and everything. They're going to try to do that. I'm interested to see how they play it because they have been emptying their farm, buying in players, and then replenishing their farm super quickly. over and over and over again, to the point where they're still top rated all the time. That's kind of what you have to do if you're not going to spend top dollar, and they might be equipped to actually pull it off and be the best of both worlds, where they spend somewhere in that 170 to 200 million range, and they can develop and draft and trade wisely. So I'm interested to see how they handle their new position, because I think it was awesome what he tried to do, but they tried too hard and brought in ill-fitting players, and
Yeah, I mean, it's never one thing, right? I know that's an unpopular podcast or radio take, but they need to spend. They need to bring in guys who make sense. They need to admit mistakes when they don't work out. They need to, when they have premium draft positions, draft guys that are good and can contribute to the major league club. Like, I don't know. This is a general answer, but it's just a pet peeve with the Pirates and the narrative around them. Like, spending doesn't fix everything.
Right.
It's not to excuse spending. It's just like there are other areas with the Pirates that they've come up short. And
and at the same time, like changes that like Ben Cherington just made to the international, scouts this year, we may not see fruit from that for 7 years.
I know.
Right.
So it's so hard to evaluate.
Yep.
And therein lies the problem with baseball a lot, which is teams and organizations that don't fall into this, whatever you want to call it, the well-to-dos, they are willing to take 4, 5, 6, 7 years sometimes to try to build something toward winning. And then if it doesn't work, then where are you at the end of that? It just seems like there's such a long process in baseball for teams that want to try to do it this way, unless you really, really hit on things. And I guess, Jason, what this is leading me into is with the Pirates and Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton and that front office, you look at them and they knew they had time, right? From at the beginning, they knew there was time. Well, whatever, we don't know the end date. If it doesn't work out, we know it's much closer than when it was at the beginning. Do you foresee any marked change in how they approach things when you talked about approach things this offseason, where admitting you've made mistakes? Take any player you want to talk to, I don't know, De La Cruz, whatever. Do you think we will see any urgency in that department simply because they don't have the time that they did at the beginning of this?
I do think we will, Jim. I don't know if it will be to everyone's liking. Like, I think, and I understand why this is. Like, I think everybody looks at the Pirates and say, like, this has been so long. Like, they need to go for it. They have Paul Skeens. And to a degree, I understand. Like, there should be real urgency right now anytime you have Paul Skeens for a bargain basement contract. And I do think we will see some of that. I don't know if it will be enough. I don't know if it will be enough in free agency to sort of reflect what the fan base wants. But, moves like De La Cruz, do you stick with them? Do you non-tender him? Do you use that playing time elsewhere? I mean, I think that's something they have to realistically evaluate. Can you?
I think he's the perfect example of, like, kind of, are you willing to admit you've made mistakes quicker than you normally would have? And a mistake that you made, not that anybody else made, that you maybe have made, and are you willing to move on from it quicker? Because I think the Brian De La Cruz thing, if it happened 3 years ago and you want to see how that works out, I think you've got time to do that. So I just think that there's other things we could talk about as far as how they want to approach things. I just think he's a perfect example of how does that look in the offseason? How does Chapman look? Is he going to be somebody you want to bring back?
Oh, no. You think? I don't know. I would be interested in bringing back Chapman. I just can't imagine Chapman re-signs here. I don't know. Like, he pitched really well.
He's going to be a top 5 arm in the bullpen for free agents.
Right.
Yeah.
He's going to have other suitors other than the Pirates.
Right.
If I'm
I feel like the Pirates probably overpaid to get him last time.
Oh, yeah.
10 and a half
paid.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe he feels like he owes them a little loyalty. That said, if he wants his career to last even longer than it already has, and he's already Methuselah, maybe getting used like 50 plus times is not what you want. Like, he really got worked like a horse here a little bit, more than his career numbers tend to reflect he should have been able to deliver. And he did well. But $10.5 million is a big chunk that I'd rather use for something that I think is hurting a lot worse.
Or just use it for that, if you're going to use. Here's the way I look at the bullpen and the bullpen spending. If Ben Cherington goes to Bob Nutting and says, I want to spend $10.5 million on a setup guy again, if I'm Bob Nutting, I pull up Fangraphs and say, what, so I can get here? No, you're not. Like, we're not doing that again. Go back and find me multiple guys or something like that. I'm not having this group thin out again. You can spend $10.5 million. You're going to spend it on 2 or 3 guys, not one. I mean, that's a hypothetical argument. Yeah. I don't think they got the results for it. And I don't think Chapman pitched well enough that he's going to have other opportunities.
I do too.
Let's take another quick break. We'll come back, talk a couple more players here.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Jason, I could argue that Brian Reynolds and whether he moves to first base or not is one of the foundational questions this team has to answer this offseason. If he can do it, and he's willing to do it, and he wants to do it, boy, it solves a couple problems, doesn't it? Even as it creates another. But it might be a cheaper hole to fill than first base, and you might be able to do it more competently. Do you think that's a real possibility? Do you think it should be?
That's hard to answer, having not looked at Brian Reynolds playing first base.
Let's assume, Jason, for the sake of argument, that he can. Okay. That he even, let's just say that maybe I think Brian Reynolds is athletic enough to do it. So let's go ahead and
Guardians just tied it up. Ryan Lytle's wife went buck nuts.
See, it's been good baseball.
Top of the 10th. All right. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think that makes sense. If they can get an outfielder, I think they need to be somewhat flexible there. I think this is the time in their build that the Pirates really need to get somebody here for multiple years. They need to get a premium bat. They need to get somebody and spend some actual money on them, get them to commit for multiple years, have this person be a presence in the clubhouse, have them buy in. And you know what? If that lines up for an outfielder and it makes more sense to play Reynolds, I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that. Position takes a backseat to hitting and sort of character or stature for me and somebody that they will add. And I would like to think that with a new hitting group, you can get through to Jack Sawinski and get more out of him. Maybe G1 Bay works out, Brian De La Cruz. I don't know. I'm counting on O'Neal Cruz in center field. Who knows what the heck happens with Henry Davis? I mean, honestly, if you move Brian Reynolds to first base, I think it kind of complicates things for Henry, Endy, and Joey Bart. Because I think Joey Bart's going to play a lot. But what do you do with Endy? Is he a better outfielder now? He's played out there? Probably not. Might fit more at first base. That kind of complicates things. Do you retry it with Henry? I don't know. So anyway. What?
And that's part of the issue is I think of where they're at is they're probably just not sure about too many things, with a lot of this. So here you are in a very pivotal offseason. And how do you let that dictate what you're doing? Because, have you talked yourself into Henry's going to be fine? Endy's going to be, versatile enough to play in several different spots and hit enough to earn the, some playing time. Do we even want to have, Jason, do you even want to have a David Bednar conversation? Because I think that's interesting too. You know, we've already talked about Chapman out the door.
Yeah.
What
Are you getting rid of him? I'm not.
I said
I'll tell you
last
what.
week that I would offer him the 20% less that you're allowed to offer in arbitration, and hopefully
Because
they
you're talking
negotiate
5 or 6 million.
something, a little tiny raise for him. But I want to pay him like a reliever, not a closer, because I don't know that I can count on him being the closer. I actually think there's some more live arms in that bullpen that will eclipse him.
Yeah.
It's tough. You're
tough.
talking $6 million for.
I know what he means to the community, and I know what he means to the team, and I know what he has done personally on his own off time. I get it. He's a great guy. Love him. I think he can still be a good pitcher. I think he will figure some things out from this year. I'm not one of those people that thinks like because he's got a little gut, he can't do whatever on the baseball field. I get it. He's been good for us. I just don't know that you can get a raise after a season like that. I just don't know that I could do that. I don't know that I could give him a raise for after that season. It was so bad, unless they take personal responsibility for how it started.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to take personal responsibility for that, because that's raising a red flag that he's tipping his pitches and telling everybody to look for it.
Oh, I meant when he was injured, like at the beginning of the
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
I felt like they probably should have just been a little more cautious with him there, and maybe he would have not had such a rough start. But they threw him right into closing, and he really didn't have a spring training, so he's asking to have a spring training in season when you're trying to win games.
Yeah,
you went and paid $10.5 million for somebody that's closed games before. Give him some rest.
I mean, I get that.
We also
that doesn't make him a bad pitcher. That doesn't make him a bad investment for 2025.
We also know with these guys there is a bit of a shelf life to them, though, right? You know, it just in general. I don't know that Bednar's of the age where you can have that conversation. Maybe it's not age. Maybe it's just number of bullets you have left as a reliever.
All the peripherals are up.
Yeah.
What's that?
All the peripherals are up.
Right.
So, I mean, it's the most confusing thing ever. The velocity's up, the movement's up. But when you watch them, and I did watch the tipping pitches things, I'm not going to pretend that as a hitter I could notice. But I totally get that it's true, and Trevor May's respected, and he did a great job tearing that apart. But I never would have noticed. I watched every single one of these games. I've never seen anything.
I agree. We don't sit there and look for that stuff. I will say my answer to that is, boy, did it change after that came out, that none of it was going on anymore. So what does that tell you is that it was important enough that he was no longer doing any of those things. So that to me was the answer. I got the answer I needed, which is teams are smart enough to pick up on it.
Mm-hmm. And it was command of his fastball. And that was contained in the Trevor May thing. Like the metrics on his stuff didn't slip. Like David Bednar isn't suddenly washed. He just didn't pitch well. And like, am I going to bet that with an off season and understanding all this, and you're going to trust him to like get back to this form and not tip his pitches and relearn how to control his fat? Like, I'm probably going to make that bet, at least for that price tag and for what I could have on the other side.
I mean, if it's like the projection of $6.5 million or 6.6 or something, I saw those stats and it was a free agent, I'm not sure that I'd be happy that the Pirates were spending it. That's why I say I would offer less for arbitration. And I think
does that change the picture, Gary, if you spend 5.5?
It might. I don't know how cheap this guy is exactly. I mean, the stories I heard were like they had to basically put pen to paper on the Perez deal before they could close up the other deal they had working. So if it's that tight, I mean, we read that Athletic story with, I think it was $30K. They held up something, Rowdy Tellez. Maybe they are that cheap, Jason. I mean, like, it sounds stupid, but if that's how tight it is, I'm gonna nickel and dime everything I think of too. Save money.
But yeah, I think we're having two different discussions here. I mean, if we're gonna talk about the Pirates being cheap, that's one thing, but we're gonna like the point I was trying to make is you're saying if they would spend that amount of money on a free agent, I would be unhappy. Okay, I understand that. What I'm saying is if you would nickel and dime them and they would only spend $5.5 million, that doesn't really change your idea, right? Like if they spent 5.5 on a free agent and he did not perform well, you'd still be unhappy. My point is that it's still, you're having to look at this and say, can I trust for this dollar amount, whether it's 5.5 or 6.5, is there enough faith there in what has gone on with David Bednar that he's going to get right and be more the two-time All-Star versus the guy with the 5.59 or whatever it was this past season? And I would make the bet. To me, it's worth it that if you're going to care, you have all of the intel on this guy. I'm looking at metrically what he's done. I'm looking at the pitch tipping stuff that can be corrected. Healthy enough. Yeah, the beginning of the season was not great, but I would still make that bet knowing the upside is a two-time All-Star closer. And, who else are you going to have close games? Does Holderman make anybody feel any better? Majinski's never done it. Nicholas has never done it. Are you going to go buy somebody? I don't know who else you'd have in this position. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you let's circle back to Chapman. Maybe you have him come back here and tell him he's the closer, but I don't know if he would do that.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I'm just pushing back because I think there is an argument to be had on Bednar. I think Craig Kimbrell had a terrible season this year, but he kind of has a terrible season every other year, right? He's been an on and off closer for the last feels like 3 decades, but he's always popping up. Bad season this year. If you came to me and told me they're going to sign him for $8 million, I might think he's worth $8 million based on some of the stuff he's done, but what he just put on paper last year, that's not how I want them to spend their dollars. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and this goes to just the fickleness of bullpens in general, right?
Yep.
From year to year. And my guess is the Pirates are going to look at this last year and think it was an aberration. That they can that they're going to get Bednar back on track. That Holderman's not going to go in that kind of funk that he had. That maybe they're not going to have some of the injuries that they had to certain guys that hurt them at certain points of the year. I think they're going to talk themselves into that. I don't know if that's the right approach. I think they still need to go and look to fortify that bullpen here in this offseason. It may be a spot where I think you can actually get some good bang for your buck as compared to big kind of deals for position guys. Thoughts, anybody?
Or some of their prospect starters are going to turn into bullpen guys. They're going to have to.
True.
Or Ortiz goes back. They may have to do something like that. Oviedo potentially would be a good bullpen guy this year as he's working his way back.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to sacrifice the length that I think Oviedo could give me. Because I do think that, you could give him 3-4 innings. If he functions as a piggyback, I'm fine with that. And maybe that's Burrows plus Oviedo, and one of them's technically a bullpen guy. Maybe one of them's technically a starter, but that's basically your 6th turn through the rotation.
Feels like they have to start using some of those guys though this year, right? I mean,
yeah, I would imagine so. They're ready. But can I say both? I want them to spend money. I want them to spend on a bat, but I also think they can spend on relievers and do it in a smart way, but address bullpen needs. Ryan Baracki, I thought had an important role, didn't play that role to, specifications or what the Pirates thought they were going to get. That's somebody to address. You're going to have to address the loss of Chapman. I like what Majinski and Nicholas have done, but I'm not going to throw them in the closer's role. I'm not going to throw Holderman in the closer's role. Those are guys, I want to see them go get 2 more with some dollars in free agency. And I think that's a reasonable ask.
I think it's an obvious place, and you've already been very kind. So we're going to wrap this up as soon as we can here. One more, Brian Hayes. Back injury all year, pretty much. Feels like it's been going on.
Supposed to be a short one, Garrett. Come on.
I think
these are tough. Man, these are tough conversations.
I think this one kind of is short because it's kind of. I feel like the Isaiah kind of Leffert deal, in part, was an unsureness of Brian Hayes' health. He helps fill that left side of the diamond anywhere that they might need help. I think they were probably shaky on what they were doing with Cruz, and they're not sure how Hayes is. If nothing else, feels like they're going to have to rest Hayes even a little more than we saw a couple years ago. when they tried to manage it. Do you feel like they have a handle on it? Brian seemed to speak very, very eloquently on it. I mean, like, he really had a firm handle on whatever their plan was. Do you feel like maybe we're going to see a Brian Hayes return to form a little bit?
I hope
you don't
so.
have to predict he's going to start hitting 25 home runs or something. Just
I'm
Brian
not
Hayes.
predict that.
Yeah.
I just want the kid to be healthy, man. Like, nobody should have to live with recurring back problems to the degree with which he's handled them over the past 3 years. I mean,
Right.
that stinks. And, I can't sit here and say that, like, I know exactly what's going on with him medically, and if he does X, Y, and Z, he's going to be all right. No, nobody's looking at me for that either. He thinks he has a good plan. The Pirates think he has a good plan. I think of Mike Tyson. Everybody thinks they have a good plan until they get punched in the face. Like, you think you have a good plan going into the season, and then if he tweaks something, it's a problem. So, like, this is where I'm at with Key. I want him to be a part of this team. I like him. I think he's can be a tremendous player when healthy and productive. I think it's a hugely important part of this team to have him in there producing like he did the second half of 2023. But we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know until we get through the offseason, get his back to calm down, and there's nowhere else to go with this. This isn't even – I don't mean this in a rude way, Gary. Like, this isn't even a conversation topic right now. They can't trade him. Nobody would take him.
I totally agree.
Cut him and make the money go away. He's under contract. He's a good enough player when he's healthy. Like, you need to help him and support him and get him back on the field and hope that he's okay. And if he doesn't,
what I'm saying is it kind of feels like they've done a lot to insulate the position. I think, Jerry Triolo kind of took some steps towards the end of the season to show the bat was a little bit more than it had been the rest of the way. The glove is obviously good enough to be utility man, Gold Glove, nominated. He can bounce around the diamond for you. It looks like Nick York can play third base a little bit. Nick Gonzalez handled it a couple times earlier. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa again. It feels like they've got enough that I don't think we have to worry about them trying to backfill it anymore, right? I mean, so we have room for Brian to actually get healthy without having to, like, be an Iron Man, right?
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I think where the conversation maybe gets interesting on this is if we see a lot of the same next year. And then where are you going with this, right? Because can you just keep running him out there trying to play and he's not nearly the player that he was when he's healthy? And what does that look like as you're trying to win now, right? As you are trying to actually compete because you kind of have to, right? You're running out of time in that regard. And so if there's a repeat of this halfway through the season, what are you left with? How are you going to deal with that? Can you just afford to sit him? How does that look if it's this bad next year?
Yeah. I mean, that's, and I don't think we have a magical answer to it. But I would say that if you can get him healthy and get on the other side of this, and then he's moderately productive, that might look different for another team. At least he's tradable at that point. Maybe another team says, you know what, I can get through to him in ways the Pirates can't. Let me see the medicals in the back. Like I tweeted something to this effect a couple months ago now, but it's a National League scout I was talking to, and I'm just thinking randomly, would you ever trade for Brian Hayes? Like, what would your thought process be? And because I wouldn't be scared off at all on the ability, it's depending on what the back looks like, and I'd want to see the medicals, and I think we'd do our due diligence. And I thought, well, that's going to kill a trade, knowing what's going on with Key's back. But on pure ability, I think you look at the Gold Glove, you look at the potency of the bat, you look at what he's done, and somebody would take that. It's just a matter of he's not healthy. So if you get him healthy, maybe you think that way. But again, I still think the easiest outcome for the Pirates is to just get him healthy, get him playing, figure out a process that keeps him rested in the lineup somewhat regularly. And as Jim was saying, they've insulated themselves very well here with Kiner-Falefa. I think, Jim, you were making that point, but yeah, it's a good one regardless.
If I wasn't, I was thinking it, Jason.
Yeah. No. Yeah, but you've insulated yourself to give them some time off, and they need to.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, I think that the team is probably where they probably should have been after like the way 2020 went. It feels like they don't get any kind of leeway for that season at all because there was literally no development at all that whole offseason. No other team got it either, but it was the very beginning of a plan. I don't know how you would walk into a system and spend an entire year managing something you can't go and actively watch. I always think about that because I don't feel like I truly got to start evaluating Derek Shelton until last year. And I didn't really like what I saw, but at the same time, I kind of felt like it wasn't fair that I didn't like what I saw. I've struggled with this subject all year. I want changes, but I'm also like, I guess, patient to a fault.
Yeah.
So are you, my friend. You spent a lot of time with us, so thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
Just in case I got cut off earlier, Jason Mackey is a prolific opinion writer and columnist for the PG. He is now on The Fan. He is doing podcasts still, even though he's busy as hell. You will see him covering the Steelers, Pitt, Penguins, Pirates, everything. I don't know how he does it. Pretty
Works
incredible
hard.
guy. Always really gracious with his time. Thank you so much, sir.
I'm very lucky, and thank you guys for having me. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Jason.
Let's give it to our buddy.
Let's go, Bucks!
Yeah, buddy. All right. See you later, everybody.